It was 3 a.m. when Louise Hay woke up screaming. Another nightmare, the same one that had haunted her for decades, the same trauma that had pursued her since she was 5 years old. Sexual abuse, domestic violence, emotional abandonment. She was 52 years old and had dedicated her entire life to healing other people. But her own trauma? It remained untouched, like a corrupted file on the hard drive of her soul. That morning in 1984, drenched in cold sweat, Louise made a decision that would change not only her life, but the scientific understanding of how the brain processes trauma during sleep. Because what Louise discovered that desperate night, what she tested on herself before daring to share it with the world, was a protocol that defies everything traditional psychology teaches about healing time. 20 years of trauma, erased in a single night. Seems impossible? That's exactly what Louise thought, until it happened to her. But first, you need to understand something crucial about how trauma really works in your brain. Because without this understanding, Louise's method will seem like cheap magic. And it's not. It's pure neuroscience, applied with the wisdom of someone who has suffered beyond what most of us can imagine. When you experience trauma, your brain doesn't simply store the memory. It fragments it, breaks it into pieces and scatters it across neural systems like shards of glass. One part goes to the limbic system, another to the prefrontal cortex, another to the autonomic nervous system. And for years, decades, these fragments keep firing alarm signals, even when the danger has long passed. That's why a song can make you cry out of nowhere, why certain smells make you feel panic, why your body freezes when someone touches you in a specific way. It's not weakness. It's fragmented traumatic programming. But here's what science has recently discovered, and what Louise intuited 40 years ago. During REM sleep, your brain has a unique window to reorganize these fragmented memories. Dr. Matthew Walker, a Harvard neuroscientist, proved that during deep sleep, specifically in the REM phase, the brain consolidates memories, reorganizes files, strengthens useful connections, and weakens destructive ones. It's as if your subconscious becomes a night librarian, rearranging shelves, archiving important information, and throwing away what's no longer useful. But here's the secret Louise discovered. You can direct this process. That morning in 1984, after the nightmare, Louise did something different. Instead of getting up and trying to forget, she stayed in bed, took a deep breath, and began to whisper a specific series of affirmations. Not generic affirmations. Surgical affirmations, designed to intercept the natural process of memory consolidation and reprogram the traumatic files. "My past does not define my present," she whispered. "I am safe now. I am loved now. I choose freedom." But she didn't stop there. Louise repeated these phrases at a specific rhythm, a rhythm that corresponds exactly to the brainwaves of deep REM sleep, 4 to 7 hertz. She was literally hacking her own neuroplasticity. What happened in the next 7 hours changed her life forever. Louise fell into the deepest sleep she had experienced in decades. But it wasn't ordinary sleep. It was reprogramming sleep. All night long, while her brain processed the affirmations on loop, something extraordinary was happening at the neural level. The traumatic fragments were being reassembled, reorganized, recontextualized. When she woke up the next morning, something had fundamentally changed. The weight she had carried on her chest for decades had vanished. The chronic tension in her shoulders, gone. The constant fear of being discovered as inadequate, evaporated. For the first time in 47 years, Louise felt free. But she was too much of a scientist to accept this as coincidence. So she spent the next 6 months testing, refining, documenting. She discovered that certain words worked better than others, that certain rhythms were more effective, that some people needed a slightly different protocol. And most importantly, she discovered that it worked consistently, not just with her. Louise began discreetly testing it with some clients, women carrying deep trauma, abuse, neglect, betrayal, devastating losses. The results were inexplicable by the traditional psychology of the time. Sarah, 34, had been sexually abused by her stepfather from ages 8 to 14. 20 years of therapy, medications, hospitalizations. Nothing had touched the core of the trauma. One night with Louise's protocol, and for the first time in 2 decades, Sarah could be touched by her husband without panicking. Robert, 41, a Vietnam veteran with severe PTSD, nightmares every night, flashbacks during the day, unable to hold a job or a relationship. One application of the method, and the nightmares stopped completely. Emily, 28, had lost a child in a car accident. 2 years of deep depression, unable to drive, unable to smile. One night of traumatic reprogramming, and she was able to visit her child's grave for the first time, bringing flowers instead of tears. It was as if Louise had discovered a neural shortcut, a way to bypass decades of traumatic conditioning and go straight to the core of healing. But the medical community of the time wasn't ready for it. When Louise tried to publish her findings, she was ridiculed. Pseudoscience, they said. Magical thinking. Dangerous for people with real trauma. So she kept it a secret. For 10 years. Until neuroscience evolved enough to prove what Louise already knew. In 1994, researchers at the National Institute of Mental Health discovered that trauma can be unlearned through memory reconsolidation. In 2003, studies on neuroplasticity proved that the brain can completely reorganize itself, even in adulthood. In 2007, research on REM sleep confirmed that it is during this phase that traumatic memories are processed and integrated. Everything Louise had discovered intuitively, science finally validated, but she had refined the method far beyond what scientists imagined possible. Louise discovered that there are specific windows of opportunity during the night, moments when the subconscious is more receptive to reprogramming. She mapped exactly when these windows open, how to prepare them, how to make the most of them. She discovered that certain words have vibrational frequencies that resonate directly with specific areas of the brain, words that can turn off the hyperactive amygdala and turn on the prefrontal cortex. She discovered that the order of affirmations matters. You need to disarm the traumatic alarm system first before installing new programming. Think of it like deconstructing a building. You can't just build on top of the rubble, and most importantly, Louise Hay discovered that this process only works when you work on 3 levels simultaneously. Level 1, conscious reprogramming, specific affirmations spoken in a relaxed waking state, preparing the neural ground. Level 2, subconscious implantation, key phrases whispered during the transition to sleep, taking advantage of the hypnagogic state. Level 3, REM consolidation, a specific protocol that directs the natural processing of memories during deep sleep. It's like a 3-stage neural surgery: anesthesia, operation, recovery. And it works because it works with the brain's natural mechanisms, not against them. But here's the part that took Louise Hay the longest to understand. Not all trauma can be erased the same way. Simple trauma, a single specific event, can be reprocessed quickly. Complex trauma, years of abuse or neglect, requires a modified protocol. Transgenerational trauma, patterns passed down through generations, needs an even deeper approach. Louise Hay developed specific variations for each type. She created customized protocols based on the age of the trauma, its intensity, its likely neural location. That's why some people experience complete liberation in a single night, while others need several sessions to dismantle deeper layers. But in every case, something shifts on the first night, always, because even deep trauma is maintained by neural patterns, and patterns can be interrupted, redirected, replaced. That's exactly what happens when you use Louise Hay's complete protocol. You're not forgetting the trauma. You're reorganizing your relationship with it, transforming destructive memories into integrative wisdom, converting painful fragments into a coherent narrative. And this happens during sleep because that's when your brain is most plastic, more open to change, more receptive to healing. It's as if Louise Hay discovered the administrator password to your own mental operating system. And now that you understand the science behind the method, now that you see how decades of suffering can be transformed through targeted neural reprogramming, you're ready to know exactly how the protocol works. Are you ready to learn the specific words Louise Hay whispered that morning in 1984? The phrases that released 47 years of trauma in a single night? Because what I'm about to reveal goes against everything you've learned about healing time. It will challenge your beliefs about how much suffering is necessary before liberation. But it will give you something that traditional therapy rarely offers: real hope that your past doesn't have to continue defining your future. and that the freedom you've been seeking for so long may be just one night away. But before I reveal the exact protocol, you need to understand something fundamental. Louise Hay discovered that there's a specific magic moment that determines whether the method will work or not. This moment happens in the first 17 minutes after you lie down in bed. It's when your brain transitions from beta waves to alpha, then theta, and finally delta. Louise Hay called this the reprogramming portal. If you miss this window, if you let your conscious mind interfere, the protocol loses 80% of its effectiveness. That's what almost made Louise Hay give up in the beginning. In the first attempts, she made the classic mistake. She tried to force the process. She repeated the affirmations with intensity, as if she were trying to convince someone resistant. Result: her conscious mind stayed alert. The prefrontal cortex took control, and she remained in the beta level, completely outside the reprogramming frequency. It was only when Louise Hay learned to whisper to the subconscious instead of shout to the conscious mind that the method began to work consistently. The actual protocol has 4 sequential phases, and each phase has specific timing. Skipping any step is like trying to drive a car without starting the engine. Phase 1, neural preparation, minutes 1 to 5. You lie in bed, preferably on your back, arms relaxed at your sides. Breathe deeply 3 times, exhaling all the air from your lungs. On the 3rd exhale, you mentally pronounce, "My brain is ready to heal." This isn't mysticism, it's neuroscience. Deep breathing activates the parasympathetic system, lowers cortisol, and prepares the brain for neuroplasticity. The specific phrase serves as a boot command for the subconscious. Louise Hay discovered that certain words act as neural master keys, words that the subconscious recognizes as instructions, why not suggestions. Phase 2, traumatic disarming, minutes 16 or 10. Here you go directly to the core of the trauma, but not in the way you imagine. Instead of reliving the trauma, you're going to unprogram it at a molecular level. Louise Hay discovered that trauma gets stuck in the body through specific muscle contractions. Tense shoulders hold fear. A clenched jaw holds anger. A tight chest holds sadness. So you speak directly to each area. My shoulders release all fear now. My jaw releases all anger now. My chest releases all sadness now. But the key is in the tone of voice. You're not asking, you're declaring. As if it were a decree of nature, Louise Hay discovered that traumas respond only to absolute authority. Hesitation is interpreted as permission to continue. Firmness is interpreted as an evacuation order. Phase 3, implantation of new programming, minutes 11:15. Now that the neural space has been cleaned, you install the new programming, but Louise Hay discovered something revolutionary. It's not enough to affirm what you want. You need to affirm what you already are. The subconscious doesn't process future time during sleep. It only accepts present reality. So instead of, "I will be happy," you say, "I am happy now." Instead of, "I will heal," you say, "I am healed now." Instead of, "I will overcome this," you say, "I have overcome this." Seems simple? It took Louise Hay 3 years to discover this subtle difference that multiplies the effectiveness by 10. Phase 4, integration seal, minutes 16:17. The last minute is the most crucial. It's when you seal the entire process in long-term memory. Louise Hay created a specific phrase that serves as a neural save command. This new truth is etched into my DNA. This healing is complete. So be it. And then, total silence. You can't think of anything else. You can't analyze the process. You can't doubt. You have to let your subconscious take over completely. In the next few minutes, you'll feel your body relaxing in an unusual way. Waves of heat or cold. Tingling sensations. A feeling of floating. This is normal. It's your nervous system reorganizing itself. And then, you sleep. But not ordinary sleep. A sleep of neural reconstruction. For the next 6 to 8 hours, while you're unconscious, something extraordinary happens in your brain. The new programming you've implanted begins to integrate with your existing neural networks. It's as if an army of neural engineers works all night, demolishing traumatic connections and building superhighways of well-being. The next morning, you wake up different. Not as a new person, as yourself, but without the weight you were carrying, as if someone had removed a dark filter that was distorting your vision of reality. But here's the secret. Louise kept for decades. The basic protocol works for simple trauma, specific events you can clearly identify. But complex trauma, years of abuse, chronic neglect, destructive family patterns, requires what Louise called the advanced protocol. After hundreds of cases, Louise discovered that there are different types of trauma, each with a specific neural signature. Abandonment trauma, fear of being left alone. Modified protocol focusing on the attachment system. Specific affirmations about safety and constancy. Invasion trauma, physical, sexual, or emotional abuse. Protocol emphasizing the restoration of personal boundaries. Specific work with the sense of bodily autonomy. Negation trauma, neglect, emotional invalidation. Protocol focused on validating one's own existence. Affirmations about intrinsic worth and the right to occupy space. Transgenerational trauma, familial patterns of pain. Deeper protocol that works with ancestral memories encoded in DNA. Each type requires specific adjustments in timing, words, and approach, but Louise made an even deeper discovery. Some traumas are so old, so deeply rooted, that they need to be nourished before they can be healed. She discovered this working with survivors of extreme trauma, people who had been broken so completely that they lost the basic ability to trust any healing process. For these cases, Louise developed the Neural Nourishment Protocol, a 3-night process that first feeds the traumatized nervous system before attempting to reprogram it. Night 1. Nourishment of basic safety. Night 2. Reconstruction of fundamental self-esteem. Night 3. Complete traumatic reprogramming. Dr. James Gordon of the Center for Mind-Body Medicine studied Louise's work years later and was impressed. She intuitively discovered what we now know to be true, that severe trauma requires pre-treatment of the nervous system before any deep intervention is possible. But Louise's most revolutionary discovery came in 1996, when she realized something that completely changed her understanding of traumatic healing. Trauma isn't just memory, it's identity. People who have suffered for decades aren't just remembering painful events. They've built an entire identity around the pain, an entire personality based on being broken, damaged, a victim. And when you try to remove the trauma, it's like trying to remove the foundation of the house where the person lives psychologically. That's what explained why some people subconsciously resisted healing, even when consciously desiring it desperately. So Louise developed the most sophisticated part of her method, post-traumatic identity reconstruction, a 7-night process that not only removes trauma, but reconstructs a healthy identity in the place where the trauma used to be. It's like performing a personality transplant surgery. You remove the diseased organs and implant healthy ones. Lisa, one of Louise's last clients, had been abused by her stepfather from ages 3 to 16, 30 years of traditional therapy, dozens of medications. Nothing had touched the core of her pain. "I don't know who I am without my pain," she confessed to Louise. "I'm afraid that if I heal, there will be nothing left of me." Louise understood perfectly. Chronic trauma isn't just a wound, it's a way of life, a way of relating to the world, a way of understanding one's own existence. So she applied the identity reconstruction protocol to Lisa, 7 nights of deep reprogramming. Each night removing a layer of traumatic identity and implanting a layer of healthy identity. On the first morning, Lisa woke up confused. "I feel strange," she said, "as if I've forgotten something important, but I can't remember what." On the 3rd morning, she called Louise crying. "For the first time in 30 years, I woke up without feeling fear. I don't know what to do with this feeling." On the 7th morning, Lisa was unrecognizable, not physically, energetically, as if a light that had been off for decades had finally been turned on. "I remember the trauma," she explained, "but it's like remembering a movie I watched. I know it happened, but I no longer feel that it defines who I am." 2 years later, Lisa opened a support center for abuse survivors. "I want other people to know that it's possible," she said, "that you can be born again, that you can become who you were always meant to be." And here's the deepest truth Louise discovered. Real traumatic healing isn't about forgetting the past. It's about remembering who you were before the trauma happened. It's about reconnecting with your original essence, the person you would be if you had never been hurt. All trauma is fundamentally a case of stolen identity. Someone or something stole your true nature and replaced it with fear, anger, sadness, powerlessness. Louise's protocol doesn't create a new person. It reveals the person who has always been there, beneath the layers of traumatic protection. That's why the method works so quickly. You're not learning something new. You're remembering something old, something that precedes any wound, something that is more fundamental than any trauma. Your true nature, your original essence, your pre-traumatic identity. And that essence was never really damaged. It was just hidden, protected, safely tucked away, until it was safe to emerge again. Louise Hay's protocol is simply the key that unlocks the door where her true identity has been hidden all these years. And when that door opens, when you finally reconnect with who you truly are, all the suffering of the previous years makes sense. Not as punishment, but as protection. Your nervous system did the best it could to keep you alive until it was safe to be yourself again. Now you know. You know the method Louise Hay spent 40 years developing. You understand the science behind what seems miraculous. You have access to the same protocol that has freed hundreds of people from decades of unnecessary suffering. But more importantly, you understand the deeper truth. Your trauma is not your identity. It's just a cloak you wore to protect yourself. And now, you have permission to take it off. Your true nature is waiting, patient, intact, ready to emerge as soon as you feel safe to be who you always were. Tonight, as you lie down, remember, you're not trying to become someone new. You're simply coming home to who you always were before the world taught you to be afraid of your own light. And that journey back home can begin today, it can begin tonight. In a single night, you can free yourself from 20 years of emotional imprisonment. The key is in your hands. Louise Hay showed you where the lock is. Now take a deep breath, trust the process, and allow your true healing to finally begin. You deserve to be free. You always have